And we are live. So thanks for being here, Park. I appreciate it.
Hey, Mike, I really enjoyed it. It was great meeting you at Social Media Marketing World a week or so ago.
Yeah. And so this is the live portion, right? So we'll kind of wait a few moments before we kick off the actual interview, the actual show. I like to let people kind of come on to the show.
Right
And
on.
it takes a little bit of time. I noticed and you said you had just used StreamYard for the second time, or this is your second time?
Well, this week I've been on it before a lot, but it seems like it's getting much more popular now.
Yeah. I've been using it for a while. I heard about it a couple of years ago now when they actually first started. And it's funny, I don't know if you went to their booth at the event.
I did.
But the founders of it are like, look like they're still in high school.
I know it's terrible, isn't it? It's just sickening. Come on, people.
I know. And so, they haven't been around long, I don't think. So, but it's such a great platform. If you started going live and doing live broadcasts when live first started coming out, you had to use something like Ecamm, or there was a couple other things, and some of those things have a steep learning curve. It's heavy on your bandwidth, so you really have to have good bandwidth, and it becomes challenging to use if you're not really have things dialed in. Now with StreamYard, it's pretty much out of the box. You're broadcasting live. So
yeah. Now I live up here in northern Arizona, and I have third world connectivity, meaning DSL, through CenturyLink. And God bless them, they somehow have kept it cobbled together, because we're out here in the mountains and it seems to work all right. Actually seems like it's gotten a little bit better over the last month or two. Are you telling me, Mike, that StreamYard would be a good platform for me when I don't have the best sort of connectivity?
Yep, absolutely. It's much lighter. I don't know how they do it or what they do. It's almost like broadcasting live for dummies, which I like. I like being able to just log in, give you a link, and there's not a lot of setup that you need to do. It's really easy. It's done for you, but they have it so that the bandwidth isn't as heavy, and I've gone live on other things and it is not as clean. So knock on wood, we typically don't have problems with StreamYard.
And where are you streaming then live? Are you on YouTube, LinkedIn? Where is this going out to?
So this is on our Facebook page for Audit. It's on the Audit YouTube channel, and it's on my personal LinkedIn.
Gotcha.
So, and I don't know if you can see, but up at the top, it'll show you how many people are watching on the live stream. But it doesn't, I don't believe it shows everybody from all of the platforms. So I know that if you're commenting, I think on YouTube, it won't show up on StreamYard, but if somebody comments on Facebook or LinkedIn, I can actually see it and I can display it on the screen.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to have to go back and see if they'll still provide me with that great discount they had at Social Media Marketing World, because I haven't done anything on it since.
Well, actually it's free to use. Like, they have a free version, so you can't get more nicer.
Is that what you're using right here? Is this the free version?
We have a middle tier version. So I use a lot of bandwidth as far as recording. I've got a lot of recordings up there. So it's not their high level account, but it's the middle. I think it's cheap. It's like $15 a month.
No. So. I think I'm paying for that for Squadcast, and I'm doing it with just audio for my podcast. I've been doing it almost 7 years, and it's always been audio. I really like the theater of the mind thing, but I've been waiting for my bandwidth to get better, my connectivity to get better here, or maybe, jumping over to a platform like StreamYard, where I can start doing them live, and I can still then provide the audio version of the show like I typically do as well.
Yeah, I just use it for ease of use. This is my third or fourth podcast that I've been involved with over the years, starting way back in 2007 or 6. I had my first podcast.
Yeah.
Back when you had to you had to really work your butt off to try and get it on iTunes. I don't even think it was called iTunes, or it was on iTunes. It wasn't on Apple Podcast at that point. But
so you're a pioneer in this world.
Not as much as you are.
I wasn't back on 2006, up 2006, 7. I was 10 years after you.
But you have You have an amazing podcast,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I think it's like one of the top podcasts, if not like I think it's the top business podcast, and it's one of the top podcasts on iTunes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I wish it was that high up there. I appreciate it, but we did just get recognized by FeedSpot as the #1 business storytelling podcast for 2022. So I'm pretty proud of that. And like you, like all podcasters out there, we just kind of pour our hot heart and soul into it. There's not any immediate return you get out of it other than you get to meet really interesting people like yourselves and learn a lot in the process, and then just find interesting ways to present them and share them with your listeners. And that's what we do at Business of Story, just like you do here, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's I don't even know where I was going with telling you that I had a podcast that long ago, but oh, I know. I used to love I just did audio, did all
Mhm.
the interviews, audio, pure audio. And I agree with you. It's different, but I like doing the video from the sense that number one, it is easy to do. So that to me, that's the most important thing is making it like as easy as possible.
Right.
I can get in here and get a recording. I can have the recording up afterwards without any editing, easy. So the other thing is that it's just another way, now I can go live and engage with a whole different audience than may listen to the podcast. So to me, I love it.
Yeah,
But
I'm
that's
gonna
not
have to
what
do that.
we're talk about. We're here to talk to you about storytelling. And I want to, I have to tell you, so the funny thing is, there's been kind of an explosion in storytelling, in the idea of telling story in marketing, in the marketing world over the past few years, and I've been a bit negative on it. I met you because I was in your session on day one of Social Media Marketing World that happened a couple weeks ago, and
Mhm.
I was in there. I didn't even realize it at the time, and I didn't tell you this when I saw you, but I was not going to be in your session. And here's why. Like I got a little burnt out on hearing this story. Everybody teaches, not everybody, a lot of people are teaching it. I don't want to bash any one thing, but
Mhm.
there's a couple of them that are, to me, almost ruining marketing for some folks.
Mm.
And I've seen, almost like, it's very popular and a lot of people are implementing it. And I don't know that they implement it the way in the right way. It's not, it's almost like it's dumbed down, but it's complex and people just don't get it right and they do it poorly. And so I was a little burnt out on it, and I love, like, I studied under some folks, like, you know who John Carlton is? That name ring a bell? He's
No, it
a
doesn't. Mm.
marketing copywriter, direct response copywriter. And these guys back in the early 2000s were teaching, Joseph Campbell's, the idea of bringing story into it, the hero's journey. And that was always important. And, one of John Carlton's most famous headlines, and you can probably see the story in your mind, is amazing secrets discovered by one-legged golfer.
There
Like,
you go.
can you get a picture? Like, doesn't that draw you in? And I'm only reading part of the headline, but
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's always been about adding story. And I think that there's been a disconnect with some of the popular things that are out there on storytelling that I think get it wrong. Before I even realized your session was about storytelling, I was sucked in, like from the moment you started talking about it. And
Mm.
I was like, as you were explaining it, I was like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is how you teach this to businesses. And it's just such a great, your ABT template is a phenomenal template. And I don't know if because you're in that, maybe you're friends with these people. That's why I don't want to bash anybody, but what's your, what's your thought on that?
Thought on just the whole overall storytelling
Yeah.
world of the
Yeah.
gurus out there and so forth. Well, number one, my thought on it is I think people get really excited about it and they want to train it because stories are just basically ingrained in us as human beings, as in Homo sapiens. And it's something that none of us really ever get taught in junior high, high school, college, of how to actually use story effectively to help connect with that person sitting across from you. If anything, I was always admonished as a kid growing up, Park, stop telling stories, because I didn't believe half the stuff I said, but like this actually worked. And I think when we get into the business world, we are so taught to lead with logic and reason and demonstrate how smart we are and look how great our offering is, that we end up sounding like a freaking brochure of just features and functions and blah 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 blah, and we don't use narrative. We and our audiences to death. And the question is, or I guess the statement is, nobody buys boring. And if you are speaking non-narratively, then you are boring your audiences. So I think this whole big push into the story training world came when a lot of people go, there's actually something to this. There's science behind it. There's neuroscience behind it. It's been around since the beginning of time. Everyone from Aristotle through Spielberg through Frank Daniels has boiled down what goes into a great story. Certainly Campbell's in the middle of that. So I don't blame people for getting excited about story, because it really works. But a lot of people don't put the effort in that are trying to train it to really learn why it works. Read the books, go to the videos and the resources. And instead of just standing up in front of an audience and say, hey, use the hero's journey or use the Pixar way, and here's the way that works, and now you're a great storyteller. Or worse, Mike, and that is they get up in front of an audience and they don't even model what they're doing. They don't even share their instruction through story. Then you get a lot of the BS that you're talking about. And I hear it all the time, or I see it all the time, and I'll check in on webinars and whatever, some story guru coming in, and all they do is tell you to tell stories versus showing you how. And believe me, I've made all those same mistakes. And as I was learning it, I got so jazzed and excited about it that I would overwhelm my audiences and my students with the hero's journey, which I boiled down to the 10 steps of the story cycle system, mapped specifically to business and mapped specifically to crafting brand story strategy. And it was really successful. I mean, the very first company I used it on grew by 600%. And Aveen Satay Tafoya, the CEO at the time, would point directly to what we did in refashioning their story and teaching them how to tell it. But it was really freaking complex. And I was hoping that I could create it so it'd be turnkey and I could hand the book to you, Mike. I could hand the book to anybody and say, here, go do your thing. And some people can, but most people can't, because they don't want to be story theorists. They don't really care necessarily about the complexity of the hero's journey in the Pixar way. They just want something that works. And it was through all of this work that in 2013, I really started studying it in early 2000s. And it was 2013, I met Dr. Randy Olson, Harvard PhD evolutionary biologist. I turned USC Film School grad and produced 3 documentaries on climate change and global warming, but has written now like 7 books teaching scientists and academics how to use the story structures he learned in Hollywood to communicate his big ideas. It was in Randy's second book, Connection, back in 2013. For whatever reason, I didn't know Randy, but they sent me a PDF of the book before it had gone to press, just because they knew I did a lot of work in story and just wanted to get my take on it. That's when I was introduced to the and button, therefore. That's when I realized, after 10, 12 years of studying the hero's journey and the other complexities of story, that this was the holy grail. I didn't even know the thing existed, but when I saw it, I'm like, boom, that's it in the branding world.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about, I want to share a couple of books that I have in my hand here. First of all, this book here, let me make sure it's on the screen.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Great book, Brand Bewitchery. I only read a little bit of it, but I have read this whole book here, The Narrative Gym. And this is all about the ABT formula.
It is.
And it's with you and Randy Olson, or with Randy Olson and yourself. And it's fantastic. And once, I think it took 2 days to read through the book, and I'd already been to your session. And I think I learned, it made more sense in your session than any other teaching I've had on using story and implementing story into your business, using it to sell, using it to market, to brand, whatever it is. Let's say communication. I mean, story, we, and let me back up a little bit. Why do you think story is so compelling to people? And I think we've all heard that story is really important. It's important to put it in there. And I think everybody knows that. Why is that? Why do people just, as soon as you start telling a story, they start paying attention more?
Well, let's go back to the savannah. And you saw this at Social Media Marketing World. I think I went through this. Maybe I didn't. Actually, I cut that out because we didn't have enough time. But I want you to picture yourself in a cave. All right. And you are Thog. You are standing in the doorway and you've looked a bit disheveled. And your fairly rotund, lazy cave mate, Larry, is sitting warming himself by the fire. And he looks up at you and he says, Thog, where you been? And Thog said, well, I went down to river to catch saber-tooth salmon for dinner. Larry goes, uh-huh. But saber-tooth tigers show up. Larry goes, uh-oh. What'd you do? Well, I gave salmon to Tiger. It likes salmon better than Thog. Therefore, I'm back here at fire with you, Larry. Larry goes, aha. 3 forces of story. Setup, uh-huh. Problem, uh-oh. Resolution, aha. Framework so simple that even a caveman or cavewoman can do it. And anthropologists argue today that our abilities as Homo sapiens to tell stories is more important for our evolution and our survival than our opposable thumbs. So why does our limbic system so naturally lean into story? Purely evolution and survival. So this limbic system, the subconscious brain, hippocampus, amygdala, and so forth, has not evolved appreciably since our ancestors navigated and survived the savannah. It's basically the same system we use today as Homo sapiens or storytelling monkeys to navigate and survive the internet and the onslaught of communication that we are bombarded with every day, both online and offline. No wonder we have this attention deficit, maybe an attention deficit disorder that we are all pushing on people out there because our subconscious brain is not built to take in all that context. So it bats most of it away unless you show up in the context of a story using those 3 forces of story. Agreement, uh-huh. Contradiction, uh-oh. Consequence, aha, the learning moment. Our cause and effect, pattern seeking limbic brain that we are not in control of loves that story. And that's how you use the, as I call the applied science, the algorithm of the ABT to bewitch, to bring in that Homo sapien sitting across from you because you are playing with their subconscious mind. You are not appealing with logic and reason to their frontal cortex, executive function brain, because it doesn't care unless that subconscious brain cares. That's why story is so powerful on us Homo sapiens.
That's well put. And I think I'd love for you to kind of explain the ABT formula, what it is for people. And let's say we'll tease it and maybe come back to it again,
Yeah.
As you kind of walk people through the how of it. Because I think that it's a fun journey that you took me through. As soon as you kind of framed it on what it was, and then shared with me the story of how you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I think you can't avoid seeing it everywhere. Like I'm literally seeing it everywhere and hearing it in everything now.
It's a little bit like the FedEx logo with the arrow in it, right?
Yeah.
You don't even know there's an arrow there until someone points it out to you. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. The same is true with the ABT. It is everywhere. And most people use it and they don't even realize they're using it. They're good intuitive communicators and they know they got to have this tension. They got to open the story loop with this statement of agreement, create tension through the problem or solution, problem that they're going to be working on. And then they've got to close that story loop with the solution, the therefore. That's why the and, but, therefore is so powerful. Let me just, and here's how you use it. You basically use it to first focus your messaging on whatever you're trying to communicate. Use it on yourself first, so you get down to the singular narrative. You get one and, you get one but, you get one therefore. Then you can go into a presentation and maybe even kick off that presentation with the ABT, so that you bring the entire room into this singular narrative that you're going to talk about, and you're going to make it really easy for their subconscious limbic system to digest and absorb and understand where you are going to take that audience. So the shortest ABT I can think of, using these three words, it is not a story in and of itself, but it uses the story frameworks of those three forces of story: agreement, contradiction, consequence. Here it goes, and I hope none of your viewers take offense, because we all fall into this. You communicate and care, but bore. Therefore, tell a story. The most simplest, basic ABT you can think about. You communicate and care. That's our statement of agreement. Yeah, you're right. I do, Park. I do communicate, and I really care. I really want to connect with people out there. It's important to me. But I hate to tell you, you bore. And it's not your own fault. It's the fault that you just have never been taught this stuff and how to use it. Therefore, tell a story. Now, we could expand that ABT, and let's take it in, and let's get really more focused now on a particular audience. Social media marketing world. You are an amazing social media communicator. And if you can connect with your audience on a primal level, then you can convert them into lifelong customers. But you're not connecting, because you're leading with logic and reason, when what your audience really wants is the emotional power of a story. Therefore, connect on the most primal level of the limbic brain, where all of our real buying decisions are being made, by using one of the three frameworks you can learn only at the Business of Story. So, all right, shameless plug, threw it in there. But here's a very quick little elevator pitch. The very first one I told you is like a 1-floor elevator pitch. And then I expanded it to like a 3-floor elevator pitch with all of the specificity to it that our brains love. But I'm just simply using those three forces of story to help hook you, get you leaning in, and get your audience to that next point when they either ask implicitly or explicitly, wow, can you give me an example? Then you launch into a little anecdotal story that makes your business point for you. In doing so, you've used the 1-2 punch of the ABT and the 5 primal elements of a short story for big impact. You can do that in under 90 seconds with any audience. Then and only then do you start marching out the logic and the reason and the data points that are going to support this emotional bond that you've just created with your audience, with your prospect, your colleagues, your customers.
That's great. Love that. And this is the framework of storytelling. I mean, you did that as a business, right? Like, you were basically framing how you would frame that, how you would use that in business. But this is everywhere. You found this in history. You found this in nursery rhymes. I mean, and I can't not see it anymore. Like, I'm watching TV, and I'm kind of seeing the framework, how it works in these shows I'm watching, or a movie or whatever. And everything literally follows that ABT.
Yeah, they do. And even from just that short little 15-second intro that you're trying to hook someone in, right up to a 2.5-hour epic movie, they're still based off of this concept of setup, problem resolution, or another way, if you want to boil it down to 2 words, arouse and fulfill. Arouse my interest, and then fulfill it with an answer that makes sense to me. And in the business world, that fulfillment, of course, is your call to action. What is it that you want them to do next, or how are you uniquely positioned to help your audience get what you want? But you can look at the hero's journey. Let's go to that real quick. And for those of you that don't know about it out there, Joseph Campbell was America's foremost mythologist. And he started studying stories from all races through all times. And while stories are different, he did find this similar pattern or framework to story he called the monomyth. And it followed anywhere from 12 to 17 steps, depending on who you believe and who you read about the hero's journey. It is just one big ABT. So the first portion of his hero's journey or monomyth is you've got a hero sitting at home. You're placing the scene, basically. This is the and statement of agreement. This is act one. They're enjoying their time there or whatever, but they get a call to adventure. A herald shows up and says, hey, guess what, Mike? It's time to shake you out of status quo and get you out in the real world, because I got to test you and run you through some trials and challenges so that I can level you up. And so that's your and statement of agreement. Think of Luke Skywalker on the planet of Tatooine, by the way, is not much different than Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. They are both in this sort of bucolic farmland, bored to tears. They want bigger adventure in their life. Do they not? So that's the and statement of agreement. But now their world gets turned totally upside down, and in the hero's journey, that's when the herald shows up and he said, guess what, Mike? I'm taking you on an adventure. You refused that call. Like, you refused the call when you came in to sit in my training at Social Media Marketing World. It's not dissimilar to it. All of a sudden you found yourself there and you're like, damn it, not another storytelling guy. But then, so you were refusing that, but then I took you into the session. And so that 90-minute session essentially was the middle part of the hero's journey, or for you. Or it's, once Luke leaves Tatooine, he finds himself in Mos Eisley in that crazy bar. And essentially he could say, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Dorothy, tornado hits her. Now she's in the land of Oz. She's got to find her way back home. He has to find his place in the universe and so forth. You, in your case, were finding your place in storytelling. Like, what the hell is this? Who is this guy? Oh, I think I'll listen. And then when that session was over, you left, I hope, with the boon, as Campbell would say. You are now into act 3, or you are in, I said, that statement of agreement up top is act 1. Now the conflict or contradiction, we are in the action of act 2 in the story. You are tested, you are trialed, you're battling demons in yourself, you're battling demons externally. And as you survive that, you return into act 3, or the statement of consequence, the consequence of what you just went through. You now return with the boon. You were leveled up in one way, shape, or form. Hopefully you were leveled up with what I taught you about the ABT and some of the other things with the business of story. But now you're back at home in your studio. You're back in your normal world again. But you essentially went through a bit of a hero's journey at Social Media Marketing World with that, as Luke did in Star Wars, as Dorothy did in The Wizard of Oz. It is this template that is just this archetype to storytelling that is in all of our lives. And even if you don't know it from a theorist standpoint, you recognize it when you are watching it in TV. Your subconscious recognizes it in a movie, a book you read, or whatever. And you also realize that you go through these little heroes' journeys and these epic monomyth journeys throughout our lives. That's why story just is imprinted in our subconscious and is so powerful for us to be able to lean into. Now, wow, I really went out on a tangent on that, but did I answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. And you brought up, like, I'm thinking of a bunch of other questions. I actually use this. I've been using this a bunch, and it's just such an easy framework. And I think people already, if you don't already have it and you're not going, oh yeah, I see how I can use that. I want to get to the point where we, share some how-to stuff here. And I thought I could do that by sharing one of the ones that I did.
Absolutely.
And I did it to promote the event.
Right? I'm going to write as you go. So
now I can't get, I edited this a little bit. These are my notes, but on the actual post to promote this, I used the ABT framework, and it's so simple to use. I think even if you're getting it wrong, as long as you're following, I think you're getting it much better than, like, I feel like I was getting things much tighter and better than I would if I wasn't using that framework, if that makes sense. Like, just by keeping that template on my mind as I'm writing, made it
well
better.
It keeps you focused, you as the storyteller, because we end up going off on tangents and sharing 2 or 3 different narratives, and that's not what our audience's brain wants. It wants one narrative. It's like, what's that one thing we're solving for in this? And then you bring them in and you can solve for 2 or 3 other things, but to hook them and get them leaning in, that's where the ABT comes in. It helps you get to that singular narrative.
And that's one of the issues here with people using something like this. And I've seen it. I saw it in your seminar, how some people were still getting it not correct. And I think a big problem that people have, I know I have it myself, is we want to talk about everything we do.
Yeah.
Right. We want to talk about all of the stuff. Our company does this much stuff, and we don't want to talk about. And the ABT is kind of forcing you to say, what's that one problem right now? What's that one thing? And that's where I think most people get it wrong. And that's what you said with it's and we do this and we do that and we also do this, and they never get to the but.
And you're boring me to death. And when was the last time you bought anything because you were bored?
Right. And it's about, at the end of the day, it's about simplicity, right? Like you had said, in the book somewhere, I jotted this down, that get to the damn point presentation. Like, why is that? And maybe you could help explain that, because what we do is we're trying to teach on this podcast, and this live series is helping people make simple presentations. That's what our stuff is all about. And I love that, why you get to the damn point presentation. Why is that so important? And what does that mean when you said that? Our audience, MSPs, I think, need to hear this over and over, because they're very, very technical. It's a very technical industry. And I think you were talking about the scientific industry, like a doctor, but they're very, very similar. Simplicity plus repetition equals mastery. I heard you say that. And you say making the complex simple is actually compelling. So I wanted to kind of unpack that.
And it's hard to do. I think Einstein said, make it as simple as possible, but no simpler, is what we're trying to do here.
Right.
And the reason why is, again, that Homo sapien brain, that storytelling monkey sitting across from you, I don't care how smart they are, numbers and data bounce off of it unless you put it in the context of a story. For instance, what is the first syllable of numbers?
I.
Numb.
Numb. Sorry.
I
don't know what I was
there,
thinking.
Mike.
I don't know what I was thinking. I'll have to edit that out of there.
But yeah, what are the first symbol? And so when you're going in, and if you're trying to lead with logic and reason, even if you're talking to that PhD across from you, they're working in that executive function frontal lobe, and they think they're so smart. But you know what? The only way you're going to get through to them is by connecting to that limbic system through story dynamics. Robert McKee, who is a legendary screenwriting coach, and I went to his 4-day story screenwriting workshop at the LAX Sheraton back in like 2008. The room was filled with 200 wannabe screenwriters and me. I wasn't going to be a screenwriter. I was in it for marketing. But he said something that blew my mind. And he wasn't talking to marketers in the room. He's talking to screenwriters. And he says, make no mistake about it. When you are writing a screenplay, always consider the story underneath this main story, because that's the story your audience is, really relating to. And someone asked a question and say, can you give me an example of it? And what he didn't give an example, but he said this. He goes, our subconscious mind is simply, I'm sorry. Let me start that again. Our conscious mind is simply the PR department for our subconscious mind, where all of our real decisions are being made. So you have to write, and that audience is always like, what's the undertone of that? What's really going on here? And that is true in our world too. So when we are trying to appeal to the logic brain, and then especially in technical things like we are thinking that that brain is going to connect the dots and get what we're saying and just naturally come to the conclusion that we want, or naturally tell it the story that we intended to tell. But it doesn't. It won't tell itself that story. It will completely fabricate a fiction, trying to make sense out of this madness of this data and this numbers and this tech that you're throwing at it, because you're confusing it. Doesn't matter if it's a PhD. You are confusing that limbic system that we have no control over. And it's like, what in the hell are you talking about? Give it to me in the context of a story. It's really hard to get that across to people. But all you have to do is go and look at the Heider-Simmel study. We did not do this at Social Media Marketing World either. As I recall, because of timing. It's a short little film just over a minute long that has just these floating figures on it. There's no people, there's no voice. It's just these figures, but your brain will automatically knit together a story to try to make meaning out of this absolute meaningless video. And I had to use that when I was teaching at Arizona State University. I was teaching storytelling in their School of Sustainability, and had a room full of these PhDs there, and we were proofing out our curriculum. I was one of 4 professors, and I was the only communications professor in it. When they introduced me and I stood up there, you could see them all, Mike, just fold their arms and they look at each other like, oh. And they literally said, I heard one guy say, here's the soft skill guy, and I took offense to that, because here they think the hard skill and the intellect is what wins the day. It ain't, man. It is emotion. It is the soft skill guy and ability to do that. And I showed them that little clip and they scoffed at it. They thought I was like, it was a parlor trick, until I asked them what they saw. And then they go around the room and you would see 3 or 4 of them. They would tell the story, and they were completely different stories which somebody else had seen. And so I said, what do you think happens when you show up with your intellect and you just presume your audience is going to connect the dots? They're going to go all Hyder Simmel on you. They're going to completely make up a story, and it won't be the story you intended unless you intentionally tell a story. And that's more important in the high-tech world than in any world. The smarter you think your audience is, the more you've got to use story on them.
I love it. That's so awesome. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to what I mentioned. I'm going to use myself.
Oh yeah, let's hear yours.
As a I'm going to throw myself on. I'm open up to criticism here, because I used this as I did the promotion for this podcast, for this episode. So if you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching it, you would have seen a headline for what this episode is going to be about. And then you would see a description, and I'm going to read you the description. Storytelling is incredibly important in sales. When you use story correctly. Oh, and by the way, I think I did some if-thens in here.
Okay.
So let's see if I did that right, because that's even deeper. So storytelling is incredibly important in sales. When you use story correctly, it makes a much deeper connection with your prospects. If you use story correctly, it hooks them, draws your prospects in, then makes closing them as easy as saying once upon a time. And when that happens, you close more deals. But, so that was all the and then there was some if then in there. And I don't know if I was supposed to put the if then in the buts or the ands, but anyway.
You can, but I just pretty much use them in the and statement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then the but the problem is, you find it incredibly confusing and very difficult to turn what your product is and what you do into story. If you can't figure out a way to use story, then you're going to continue struggling to close sales. And then therefore this is why you absolutely need to tune into this live broadcast with story expert Park Howell. He's an author, host of one of the most popular business podcasts, a storytelling coach, and just a really great person. And on this live episode, he's going to be sharing exactly how to use the Abt formula to easily create story-driven content that you can use in your sales and marketing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for all those kind words. Now, my job, of course, you are the content expert. I'm the form guy. Here's what I'd like you to do. Read your and statement of agreement again and just stop after you're done with that.
All right. Storytelling is incredibly important in sales. When you use
stop you right there. All right. So you are leading with an opinion or an assertion, which can raise the hackles of your audience, because you're saying storytelling is incredibly important. And they're like, well, who says? You say that. Now you are making your audience say, oh, yes, wise guy, prove it to me. So sorry, go back. Let's start again.
Right. And you know what? This is so great, and this is why I wanted to do this. You're proving my point, that this is such an easy formula. And you can see, I may not have nailed it. Park's going to fix it for me, but I use this formula, and I think that's a pretty good damn description. Now, it's an easy formula, but it can be really deep. There can be a lot to this, and you can really go through and fine tune this. And so I just kind of wanted to illustrate that. you know, storytelling is incredibly important in sales. When you use story correctly, it makes a much deeper connection with your prospects. If you use story correctly, it hooks them, draws your prospects in, then makes closing them as easy as saying once upon a time. And when that happens, you close more deals.
Okay, so we'll start there. Number one, I like your alliteration. I like, it's as easy as once upon a time. That's some fun stuff there, metaphorically. It is a little bit general, so you do run the risk of people kind of going all hide or simile on you, not quite understanding what you're saying by that, and so will make up their own story. That's why hide or simile comes in is so important to this. So here's what I'd like you to do, and this is for all your viewers and listeners here too. Is Mike, who is your number one audience for this particular show? Can you identify them, and can you call them out or identify them in that first line of your and statement of agreement? Who are you talking to?
MSPs, IT providers who are
What's
very,
an
very
MSP?
technical. An MSP is a managed service provider. So if you're a small business or medium business, you are not, maybe you don't have an IT department, but you need an IT department, you would
Mhm.
you can hire an MSP and they can act as they become your IT department.
Okay.
So it's an
So who
call.
within that, so now we're talking about a category of people, which is fine, but who within those organizations are you talking to? Are you talking to a chief marketing officer, a content creator? Who specifically are you talking to?
And that's such a great question because, the answer is, gee, we could be talking to a bunch of people, right? But that's not the right answer. Right?
Wrong answer.
Yeah. So usually we're talking to the owner or the sale. Well, I just did it. We're talking to the person in that company that sells. So
So
it's,
the
it's not
chief
necessarily
revenue
the
officer,
salesperson.
head of sales?
Well, it's usually going to be in a lot of MSPs. It's going to be the owner. The owner does the selling.
Mhm.
In bigger MSPs, it's going to be a designated salesperson. But it's really,
Okay.
we're talking to the person in that MSP who is responsible for going out and presenting the findings of a technical assessment and selling them. Selling
So
meaning.
so you can say, you are critical to the revenue generation of your MSP, right? So you're identifying someone, you're saying they are critical to it, and they can go, yeah, that's me. That I am critical to it. I don't know if I'm the owner, you don't know if I'm the owner or the chief revenue officer or whatever, but just throw that word you in there. When in doubt, pronoun. It's your best pronoun you could ever use in marketing. You. Now you are talking specifically to me. And if you're not talking specifically to me and I see that you and the modifier to it, I go, oh, this isn't for me. And that's okay because you don't need them in there. You want to find that core audience. So, again, I'm the forum guy, but a content thing here might be, you are critical to the generation of revenue for your MSP, right? And okay, then now let's go to your if then statement. And this is something that we didn't teach a lot at social media marketing world because it's like ABT 201. It's about finding the specifics in that statement of agreement. And if, what's your if?
If you
And
use story correctly, it hooks them, draws your prospects in, then makes closing them as easy as saying once upon a time.
okay. And if you could connect with that audience on a deeper level, on your prospects on a deeper level than ever before, then you are going to experience 4x to 10x growth for your MSP, right? You're just a statement of agreement. That's something like, yeah, you're right, man. If I could connect with them on a deeper level, I absolutely could do that. So you haven't even talked about story yet, but you're not connecting. And you can even use kind of my thing because most MSPs or most people in your position.
Shoot.
There we go.
Whoa.
Yeah, that actually adds to the but there because now it's like the circus has come to town.
Oh my goodness.
But
I
you're
don't know where
not
that came from.
connecting because you're leading with logic and reason when what your audience really wants is the emotional pull of a story. So you could even borrow my but in there, and throw it in there. Um, therefore, now read your therefore for me again.
So therefore, this is why you absolutely need to tune in to this
Opinion,
live.
assertion, pull it out. Take out all opinion and assertion. Let them arrive at that.
Right. Therefore, Park Howell will be my guest. Park Howell, the storytelling expert, is going to be my guest to share the ABT formula.
Let's flop that. All right. So now what you're doing is you're leading with the how, and I want you to lead with the what. There we go.
Okay. This is I'm really sorry about this. I got to shut my phone down.
No sweat. Is that your ringtone?
It is literally my phone. Somebody calling me. I don't know why it's playing in the middle of this broadcast, but it must be connected somehow to my board without me realizing. That's the problem with technology. Is it's really cool. The mixer board that I have next to me, it's a Rodecaster Pro. It's an amazing piece of technology. It makes podcasting like a breeze. But because it's so easy, apparently my phone decided to connect to it, and now I'm getting a phone call and it's appearing on the podcast.
But you just demonstrated the ABT in action in our life. You know, Mike and Park are having an engaging conversation, and if I can truly understand how to work this ABT, then I, as a viewer, can actually start using this bewitchery on my own customers. But his damn phone keeps going off. Therefore, I need to get back on track of where we were with the ABT. It's just like Will Smith, you know, slapping the hell out of Chris Rock during the Oscars. Another ABT in action. You know, and we were at the Oscars and we're giving away lots of awards, and Chris Rock is up telling jokes, setting up the best documentary award. But Will Smith slapped him across the face because he was offended by a joke he made about his wife. Therefore, some say it might have been the most interesting Oscars they ever saw in their life. ABT.
That's fantastic.
There it is. Something unexpected came out. You have a statement of agreement, show's going on, but all of a sudden this contradiction happens. Whoa, who gets up on stage and smacks someone across the face? Therefore, you know, here's the consequence. So let's go back to your therefore. We have this if-then clause that we like to use. I like to use in the and statement of agreement because it brings more specificity to it. You are chief revenue officer at a MSP, and if you can connect deeply, then you'll convert prospects into lifelong customers to grow your revenue. If then, it's nice. It's a causal way to connect into the cause and effect limbic system. Now, we also have one called the what, how, or the how, what. What I want you to do when you get to that therefore statement, the what is always the outcome. It's the solution that you're solving for. The how is you or your guest, in this case, me, how you're going to do it. So when you get to the therefore conclusion, I don't want you to say, therefore, Park Howell, because I'm the how. I'm out of context still. Let's stay in the context of the what. You know, therefore, in this episode, you will learn how to connect deeper than you ever have before. That is the what that we're talking about, using the framework, the foundational framework. This is now the how you're going to do it. So the what is connecting deeply. The how is through the foundational narrative framework as taught by our guest, Park Howell. So you see, I don't come in. You and your brand don't come in until the absolute end of the therefore. And that's what blows people's minds, because everyone thinks that their story is about them, their brand, their offering. Aren't we fantastic? Aren't we great? We're going to rock your world. And it's not. It's always about your customer. Place them at the center of the story. And that's what the ABT does. And you do that right up top, Mike. Now, you had started yours by having that opinion and assertion that storytelling is that powerful. You may have a lot of people say, well, that's bullshit. I mean, you even said that's bullshit at the beginning of the show. You had heard so much about this stuff like, oh, God, I showed up at the wrong damn room at Social Media Marketing World. Thank God I kept you there. I don't know what I said up top to keep you there, but I'm glad you did. But they're going to do that with your ABT too. Who's this Mike guy that's telling me that storytelling is that important? You want to start from their perspective. Start with the pronoun switch to you. You are such and such in an empowering organization. And if you can connect at this level, then you can move people to action here. But you're not connecting because of you're leading with logic and reason. Therefore, we are going to show you how to connect deeper than you ever have before using the power of story, all starting with the narrative framework of the and, but, and therefore by today's guest, Park Howell. It's not about me. It's all about them. It's all about you and your show. It's all about helping your viewers and your listeners get what they want out of life. We come in not as the protagonist or the hero in the story. We come in and play an actually more important role. We are the mentor or guide. We're just helping them get what they want. And if you go back to the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy and Luke Skywalker, those stories were all about them. They were the singular protagonist in each of those stories. Everybody else was in that story surrounding them as their mentor and guide. And that's what you do as a brand.
That was perfect. That was great. I was pretty proud of my ABT, but boy,
it's
that
very
was
good.
much better.
And by the way,
this is
it's way
amazing.
better than probably what you had originally, just because you're using the three forces of story. Now,
Right.
what your ABT was there is very natural. It's what everybody does. We call that an informational ABT. It was long, probably twice as long as it actually needed to be, but that's
Right.
okay, because you got to start by getting your concepts down. And then what we do is, like, if you get this long ABT and it's too generalized for you, now make a conversational ABT out of it. And what that means, it is so short and vacuous that it's really nothing you would use. But if you did use it on a room of 5,000 people that had no idea who you were and what you're talking about, they would immediately get, what you were there to talk about. So in your case, let's just call it connection. You want to connect, but you're not connecting. Therefore, we're going to show you how to connect. That's all your conversational ABT is. We haven't even talked about story yet. Saying, you're right, man, I need to connect better. Therefore, then you get in and you take that big, long informational ABT, which you've got now, say, what's my singular thing? I'm going to show them how to connect using story. Then you boil it down. It's like Goldilocks all over again. Too long, too short. Just right. And that's the one you go with.
That's awesome. All right. So what should people do to practice this? Okay. Now this was phenomenal, right? You just gave what I think is a masterclass on how to do that. You took my ABT, which I thought I had pretty good.
You did.
We totally like turned it into gold. Right. But now so what's the secret to kind of, okay, Park's not going to be here with me tomorrow when I write this. What are some tricks and tips that you have to help people make sure what they're doing is they're doing it right? Right. Like,
Yeah.
cause you can write it and go, oh my God, this is a masterpiece. Great that I read this book. I mean, obviously they should read this book, The Narrative Gym for
Narrative
Business.
Gym for Business, 75 pages, very crisp. If you know Strunk and White, they were the elements of style, the elements of writing. We wrote this book as the kind of Strunk and White of storytelling. It's the elements of doing an ABT and takes you in a deeper dive into some other areas. You can read it in about 2 hours, but it's just meant to have by your side. Like, what did they say about that if-then thing? You can go right to the if-then chapter and take you through it.
Right.
And then one other thing I would say, Mike, is I learned this as a copywriter 35 plus years ago, working for an agency and a guy by the name of Sandy Peterson. I would bring him in, the script that I wrote, and I go, oh, I'm so proud of this for this next radio spot. Of course, he'd take his Ren pen out and he'd mark it up. And one day he handed a script back to me, and I was probably all pouty face and, baby-like. And he goes, hey, I just want you to remember, it's way easier to be an editor than it is a writer. So as I edit your ABTs, just know I've got like 40,000 hours of experience doing this, and my job is way easier than to actually write the damn thing in the first place. So you did a great job with yours, and I want all your listeners and viewers to know that. Just get in and do it. Here's what I want you to do. There's 5 or 6 or 7 different steps to this. Go ahead and write them down as we go through it, but it all comes down to really using the 3 words of the and, but, and therefore. I want you to start like we did with Mike here. Who's your audience? And act like they're sitting right across from you and say, you are so-and-so, and like Mike it demonstrated, we all have a lot of different audiences that we're talking to at any one time, but find that singular persona in that audience that then kind of radiates out through that rest of the crowd. You hear the best presenter say, find that skeptic in the room and then sell to them, even if the room's full of 5,000 people. because whatever you're telling to that skeptic, you are going to get the others on board. So I want you to just find that singular audience. What do they want in relation to what you're going to be talking about? So the problem you're solving for. What is it that they want, and why is it important to them? What you've done is you've created the ordinary world, as Campbell would call it in his Monomyth, of identifying your protagonist, the core audience member you're speaking to, or prospect or customer. What is it they want? Why are they going to invest in you? What are you going to help them get? And raise the stakes. Why is this so desperately important to them? So those are the first three questions you're going to ask yourself. Then you're going to go to the problem. But why don't they have it? What's the gap? What's standing in their way? What's the thing that's keeping them up at night, that's frustrating the hell out of them? What is it that they, is physically standing in their way and emotionally pounding on them? Therefore, the really easy part, how are you uniquely equipped to help them get what they want? So why are you the answer? Why are you the mentor or guide in their world? So that's the first 5 questions I want you to answer. Who's your audience? What do they want? And why do they want it? But why don't they have it? Therefore, how will you help them get it? Then you go in and you start proofing out your ABTs. All right. So did I identify my number one audience? And I'm really clear. Am I not making any opinion or aspirations in that statement of agreement? I'm not talking about a problem. I'm making it very aspirational, painting a brighter future for tomorrow. I am not leading with the problem. That's going to be one thing people will do, is they will default to lead with that problem right up top. This is all aspirational. There's a lot of different reasons for that. And we can talk about that, at some other time. All aspirational up top. And then is my problem crystal clear? Did I start with, but you're not connecting? That's the problem, because, and here's the why you're not connecting. I want you to start with that, but here's the problem. And you actually said, but here's the problem. You don't even have to say that when you get an ABT down, because you are already telling the limbic system through the structure that this is the problem. You're letting it arrive at the fact that, shit, this is the problem. And then the therefore is about you. Now, when you look at that therefore, like we did with yours, Mike, therefore, are you starting with the what? The what is the outcome? The what is the solution to the problem? The how is you or your brand or whatever. You don't come in. You do not enter stage left until 5 beats into this whole story, right? Because it's all about your audience, what they want, why they don't have it, how you're going to help them get it. So that's what I want you to look at when you go through that. And then, do the double check. Did I place my audience at the center of the story? And is my ABT about what I make happen versus what I make? That comes back to that concept of what people really don't give a crap about what you make. They don't care about how your software is cool. They don't really care about your platform or your program. They want to know what you make happen in their life. If they buy into that, if you're compelling enough that they buy into, I'm going to go with Mike because he's going to make this happen. Now their logic brain is like, okay, but how's he going to make that happen? Oh, he's got this really cool platform here that's been proven over to the test of time. Yes. And now just think back to Robert McKee, that PR department of that conscious executive functioning frontal lobe that looks at the story cycle system or your platform or whatever, is now the PR department for that emotional construct of the limbic system that says, I like this guy. I think he can help me. I'm in. And now it's just proving itself out. But that comes at the very end of it. So your ABT is about what you make happen. It's not about what you make, but what you make happen. That makes sense?
Brilliant. Well, Park, thank you so much for this. I could talk to you all day about it, but we got to let you get back to your thing and let everybody get back to work today. How can people learn more about you?
Absolutely. Well, let me end with one last ABT. The ABT is short and sweet, but tricky. Therefore, practice. And let me, as your folks have gotten this, listened to it, they got the basic sense of it. Here's what I tell everybody in the practicing. Look, you already got to write emails. So every day from here on out, write a minimum of 3 emails that you're already writing using an ABT as the introduction to it. what you're going to find is it'll cut your writing, your emails by 2/3. Your audience will actually respond to you because they will understand what you're asking of them. And it's got a built-in call to action in it, and you're there for it. So every day, write 3 ABTs. Number 2, share this show with and or go and teach somebody what you learned about the ABT right here. Don't worry about the if then clause, the what how clause, or the word because. I just want you to think of the 3 forces of story of agreement, contradiction, consequence. And like Mike did, created this great ABT using it. We can always make them better, but go and teach somebody how to do it, because you don't know what you don't know until you articulate it and start teaching it to somebody. And then today, tomorrow, by the end of the week, which I guess is tomorrow, use the ABT on one significant communications challenge or opportunity that you currently have on your plate. Something that you feel like you've got some malaise around, you're not as clear as you want to be, you're still trying to find your way through it. Use an ABT on that. Those are the 3 ways to really get going, and share this show. I mean, because this is the best way to really get your colleagues on board and whatever. If I can help you, come on over to businessofstory.com. You can even send me an email, Park, P-A-R-K, as it says right there, at businessofstory.com. I've got my show on every Monday. It's been up for the last 7 years, called Business of Story, where I feature story artists from around the world to help you learn how you can excel through the stories you tell. And Mike, I just want to thank you for having me here today. I really enjoyed it. I love meeting you. We got together the day after my workshop, and it was so much fun to see the excitement you had and sharing your ABT with me. We did a little bit of coaching then.
That's right.
And just a delight to be on your show.
Gotten so much free coaching out of you, Park. I owe you big time. And just so people understand the context here, I was at Social Media Marketing World out in San Diego, and Park led the first day session, a workshop. It was longer. I think it was 90 minutes, and you really
that's what I like about that position.
It was just so great. And I wrote up my ABT in there, and then I took it to him. I mugged him in the hallway. And read it to you, and you were gracious and redid it with me. And and that's why I wanted to do what we did on this show, to show people, because I think that's the power of it, when they can see you taking it, when they heard how I wrote it, right? And they can see the structure. And I think people start to see, okay, I get it, and, but, therefore. And then when you changed it, that's just, that really solidifies it in my mind.
Wow.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thanks for being a guinea pig for us too, and keep writing them. You did a great job with that first one. Just keep working on them.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Park. I appreciate it. Go to businessofstory.com and look up the Business of Story podcast on Apple. It is a phenomenal show.
Well, thank you.
You have done hundreds of episodes of your podcast. I mean,
354, I think I'm at right now.
Incredible. So there's some incredible content there. Go check it out. And we'll see you on the next episode, everybody. Thank you again, Park, and keep on elevating IT, everybody.
All right, Mike. Thank you.